to the Speak Up for Blue podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Lewin. I hope you had a great Monday. Happy Monday. I know it's Monday and you don't want to go back to work, but it's a Monday right before the long weekend. I think in Canada and the U.S., we have Labor Day weekend coming up, which is also my birthday on Tuesday, September 5th. So the weekend may get extended. I don't know, depending on vacation time and all this stuff. So I'm always psyched for this time of year. Of course, kids go back to school. Some people in the U.S., kids have already gone back to school, and it's a lot of fun, new beginnings and everything like that. But I'm pre-recording this actually before because I'm off to a friend's cottage, to relax and be by the water for a little bit, and I'm excited for that. So I decided to pre-record this episode. There's two stories that I really wanted to cover today. One, apparently Atlantic salmon escaped to the Pacific Ocean. So they're now introduced. Are they established population? I don't know. We're going to talk all about that. We're also going to talk about a politician's knee-jerk reaction to a shark acting like a shark and eating a seal very close to shore in front of people. Freaked out some people, but not really. But this all of a sudden, this politician wants to kill all these great white sharks that come near beaches. So we are going to look into this, find out how ridiculous this actually is. And that's going to be the stories for today. If you guys want to talk about any of these stories, you want to ask questions about this podcast, this episode, or anything else on this show, you can do so at speakupforblue.com/group. Join our Facebook group. All you have to do is use your Facebook account. Request to join, I'll let you in. We have over 260 people now. It's getting bigger and bigger. It's awesome. A lot of people are participating, which is awesome. We had a really good episode last week, I felt, with all about marine conservation careers for all the people who are looking for careers out there. We vented. It was awesome. I just think it's fun. So go speakupforblue.com/group. Join our Facebook group. And I will see you in there. Introduce yourself when you get in there. There's a couple questions you have to answer. Just I do that, one, to know who you are. Also, it kind of decreases the number of spammers that try and get in the group. So anyway, let's start this show. If you are sick of hearing of the doom and gloom of the ocean and not knowing what to do, you're in the right place. If you want to meet people working to protect the ocean, then you are in the right place. If you want to find out how you can get involved in protecting the ocean, then you are in the right place. This is the Speak Up for Blue podcast, and I am here to empower you to live for a better ocean. Hey everybody, welcome back to another exciting episode of the Speak Up for Blue podcast. I am your host, Andrew Lewin, founder of SpeakUpForBlue.com, marine ecologist, and self-proclaimed oceanpreneur. And today we've got a fantastic show. Today we got a couple of stories that are a little weird in what happens and sort of the reasoning of why it happened. In San Juan Islands in the Pacific, there are a lot of Atlantic salmon pens for aquaculture, so fish farming. And over the last week, there was high tides and strong currents, and that's what's being blamed for these pens going off and basically breaking down and opening and allowing maybe 4,000 to 5,000, maybe more, maybe less. We're not too sure of how many, but the estimates right now are about 4,000 to 5,000 Atlantic salmon into the Pacific. That's right. And basically in a situation where we could have invasive populations reproducing. There's no proof of that right now, but there's definitely a possibility. We're going to talk about sort of the ramifications of that, why this isn't prevented, and so forth, and go into that. We're also going to talk about a politician's knee-jerk reaction to a shark basically eating a seal, which is acting like a shark, in front of beachgoers right near shore. It's a weird situation when politicians react that quickly and start and put in a proposal to actually bait hooks for great white sharks and then shoot them once these sharks are on them. We've been through this before. We're going to talk about it again. This is not what we want to do. This is definitely not what we want to do. So anyway, we're going to talk about that. Before we do, I just want to talk about our Patreon campaign. We have a Patreon campaign to help support the podcast, to help support our mission. Our mission at Speak Up for Blue, we're a social enterprise. Our mission at Speak Up for Blue is to help people get into marine conservation. It's not only to make you aware, which is what we do every day through this podcast and through our YouTube videos. What we do is we make you aware, but we also want you to get involved in ocean conservation. So we're putting together a program right now for ocean citizen scientists. So people who want to do citizen science, but maybe don't know much about the programs or need a little bit of training to qualify for these courses or to qualify for these programs. What we want to do is we want to put that together and help citizen scientists for the ocean get those programs, introduce them to new ones, find out feedback from different ones, and find out what you can do, and maybe even follow up on some of the programs and what they do. And it'd be great. I think it's going to be a great resource to have for people who want to go into citizen science, because a lot of times in citizen science, a lot of times you might have to travel to get to where you want to go, to do the citizen science, and that's expensive, and you don't want to go there and not have a good time, not make sure you don't know where the results are going and things like that. So you want to make sure you know a lot about all the programs you're doing, and so we want to put that together for you and for any other ocean citizen scientists out there, or potential ones anyway. So that's what we're going to do. If you go to speakupforblue.com/Patreon, Patreon, you can do a monthly contribution. It's basically a crowdfunding site. It's safe, secure. I actually support other creators in science on that site, and I've been doing it for over a year, and it's been great. I've never had a problem with my credit cards. I've never had a problem with security issues or anything like that. It's really easy to sign up, and it helps us. It helps creators like myself who create content and try and bring resources to you to help you get involved in the ocean, and it helps us a great deal. So if you go to speakupforblue.com/Patreon, Patreon, you can help with that. So, and there's different incentive levels for the amount of contributions. Just remember, it is a monthly contribution. I don't want you guys to think that you pay one lump sum. I think you can do that, but most of the times it's a monthly contribution. Anyway, speakupforblue.com/Patreon. Let's get into the show. The first topic we're going to discuss is this Atlantic salmon stuff. Now, it's really interesting, the reasoning why these pens opened up. Apparently, the reasoning was because of strong tides and strong currents. And so the nets broke loose of the anchor. They're anchored to the bottom. The nets broke loose last Saturday afternoon, and it basically opened up. And they said, they said it's because of strong tidal flows, which are tied to lunar cycles. And so I guess what the people for the aquaculture company, Cook Aquaculture, blamed exceptionally high tides and currents coinciding with this week's solar eclipse. And it's kind of funny because I just find it funny because Ron Warren, who's the assistant director of the fish program for the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, he said about the strong tidal flows. The strong tidal flows, which are tied to the lunar cycles, not the eclipse itself, could be a factor in the damage, along with the amount of fish in the pens, which were estimated at more than 1.3 million kilograms. He goes, a lot of fish, a lot of weight, certainly could have aided in the compromise of the structure itself. So what essentially happens, and what I want to explain to you guys of how these open pens work, you've got salmon, Atlantic salmon, who will spend their hatch life in probably a facility. Once they get to a certain age, they will go out to an open pen. So this open pen is actually a net or a series of nets in the ocean. And they're anchored to the ocean. And they get fed. And there's waste. And each company has to deal with that waste to make sure it doesn't affect the ocean itself, or that local area of the ocean itself. Because there have been problems in the past where below the net, there's so much waste that it becomes a hypoxic area, basically no oxygen in there because there's so much waste in the breakdown, the microbes and stuff like that. So there have been problems with that before. So usually it has to be in an area with high flow so that the nutrients can get dispersed, because these are like nets with a concentrated amount of fish, right? The ocean's not used to having that many fish in one spot on a regular basis, because these fish normally, if they were set free, they would they would swim around, right? They would go they would go far. Atlantic salmon travel pretty far. So, you're in a concentrated area, and what you're doing for a fish farm is essentially you're creating fish for food. And there's controversy in that. A lot of people have controversy in that. And the one controversy, one of the biggest things, the concerns that people have, is what if these fish or these salmon get out into the open? Now, it would be a little different if these Atlantic salmon were being farmed in the Atlantic. But they're in the Pacific now. So if they get out and they establish a different population in the Pacific, these Atlantic salmon, they become an introduced species, right? An invasive species that were introduced by accident or on purpose, who knows? But this would be a by accident. And they would, populate, and then they would compete with the 5 species of Pacific salmon that are around right now, that are probably having trouble in itself just managing the ocean on themselves, because the populations fluctuate up and down. Their wild populations fluctuate up and down like you wouldn't believe, affecting orca species, and their food, the resident orca species, and so forth. So it's a big problem. Like it's a big concern that a lot of people have, and that a lot of people are very against fish farming just for that purpose, just for that concern, which is huge. It's a big concern. It changes. It's ecosystem changing, right? So the fish farms, the aquaculture facilities, their number one job is to make sure that these fish don't get out. So if there's a concern with the amount of fish in a net that can actually compromise the structure, you would have to make sure that the amount of fish in each net will not compromise the structure. But you want to make sure you maximize the amount of fish in the net so that you can sell more, right? These are profitable companies. They want to make a profit. They're driven by it. So they're going to try and maximize the feed to make them grow as fast as they can. If they have diseases, they're going to treat them, right, with antibiotics. And they're gonna feed them, and they're gonna sell them as fast as they can. Now, a loss of this magnitude is going to be huge for this fish farm, right? You don't want to lose fish. Nobody wants to lose fish, but that's your number one goal. If you have strong tides coming, and they do, and strong currents, shore up the anchor, or maybe take some fish out if you can. Prepare for it. That's why you have marine biologists working there. Prepare for it. You can predict when the tides are going to get stronger, and it's not because of an eclipse. And I feel that it's another excuse, and I feel that they had one job, and they didn't do it, and this is on them, and they should pay a penalty. If you're going to bring a fish from an opposite coast to farm, it is your responsibility to make sure they don't get out. Now, there have been reports of them getting out, in as individuals, but not this amount. 4,000 to 5,000 fish, that's a lot. That's a little too much. And I think they should pay some fines. That we don't know if we don't know if this is going to be an established population now, but there's a better chance now because there's 4,000 to 5,000. There's still a lot of things that need to happen from that. They need to be monitored and so forth. Now, this is in the San Juan Islands, and so it's in the U.S., but it's very close to Vancouver Island and Victoria and Sydney, and in Canada, so they can move up and down the coast if they want. Luckily, there are groups set up, Atlantic Salmon sightings. So there's a Fisheries and Oceans Canada has a program that monitors Atlantic salmon sightings. And so far this week, they said they haven't had any sightings, but I mean it could still happen. Now, they've done monitoring in the rivers and streams there's a 2015 report, and they found none in Vancouver Island streams that were surveyed. So there is. What's nice is there's a hotline. If people found Atlantic salmon, they call that hotline. There are people who go around in Canada. I don't know about the U.S. Programs, but in Canada there is a program where people do monitoring reports to actually look out for these types of streams and looking for Atlantic salmon in these streams. I wonder if they could use eDNA to find out where they are. eDNA is we've talked about this on the program, where essentially you can take water samples and measure the DNA of fecal matter of fish, and maybe even scales or anything like that, and you can identify the type of fish that have been in those waters at some point in time. And maybe you can find out that it might be an easier way to do the analysis, and cheaper way too, and to find out where these fish are going. But it's a big concern. I feel that I'm not necessarily against fish farming, because I understand it could be the way of the future. A lot of people depend on fish, but there are definitely concerns that need to be addressed for each fish farm, right? And I think if a company does, like, it's almost like you talk about oil, right? And you say, okay, oil spills are going to happen. Well, that's not good enough. You shouldn't have oil spills. You should be saying, no, oil spills are not going to happen, and these are the measures we're going to take to make sure oil spills don't happen. Well, it's the same thing with fish. If you're going to take the responsibility of bringing a fish over from an opposite coast to the Pacific coast and say, okay, we're going to make sure that these guys never get out, but it's going to happen at some point. How can you stop 1.3 kilograms of fish? 1.3 million kilograms of fish? How are you going to stop an individual from escaping from a pen if there's a hole? How do you monitor that constantly? You better show that you're monitoring that constantly. And then you let strong tides and currents move the anchor and then break the pen. Like this, is this going to happen all the time? We need to, these companies need to show that this is not going to happen again. And it shouldn't have happened in the first place. And they should pay a heavy fine for this, because this is ridiculous. You should not allow this to happen. Now, this happened in the U.S., so, Canadians can't, prosecute the U.S., but in the U.S., there should be a fine for this type of thing to happen. It's your responsibility, the company's responsibility, for bringing these fish over and basically potentially introducing them into the Pacific. Right? So there has to be some sort of responsibility here, right? And accountability, because if there isn't, there should be no reason why these fish should be coming over, right? And I think there are. If you're going to ask the question, I always try to anticipate the questions. If you're going to ask the question, why are Atlantic salmon being put over the Pacific? I think there's just many more aquaculture facilities there. I think there are some pens on the East Coast as well. I just don't think there are as many. The West Coast seems to have a lot more. It's quite a booming industry there. But this is the way it is now. Now we have to deal with 4,000 to 5,000 fish going out. So I'd love to hear your thoughts. Go to the Facebook group, speakupforblue.com/group. Let me know your thoughts about this. Are you angry? Do you think there should be fines coming down? How do you think they should be? Do you think they should prove that they can't? That this won't happen again? Like, this is ridiculous in my mind. Like, this could be answered through models. This could be answered through current models where you put out different currents and the potential of the strength of the current and tides, and say, will these anchors hold? Right? It seems, I just don't understand why this doesn't happen. And I don't have all the answers. I'm just looking into this. So I'm going to ask some friends of mine who are in sort of research in aquaculture about this. So I don't want to really speak out of turn, but I'm quite angry. This is this could be more of a rant of a podcast because of the next story. But this one really makes me angry. That's a lot of fish, and I just feel that shouldn't happen. But speaking of next story, let's move on to the next one. There was quite an interesting video that popped up recently, and I think it was a couple of days ago as I recorded this. And I think it's really cool. There was a great white shark who attacked a seal. And that you would say, okay, well, that's what they do. They eat seals, and that's what they do. But this was a few feet from shore. It was in the shark was in shallow water. Apparently, it was right by some surfers, and there was a lot of blood. Of course, great white hitting a seal, and he was successful. It looked like, according to the video. You can't see much in the video. You see maybe some fins, but you see some red water, and you see a person who's walking or running alongside the water, trying to get two surfers who are close by out of the water to make sure that they were safe. Nobody got hurt. Nobody got hurt. This feeding, people say it's an attack. It's a feeding. He was feeding. This shark was feeding. And this feeding was really close to shore, so it scared a lot of people. And what was interesting, though, is after the feeding incident, reporters come by and they interview people. And people were still going in. They closed down the beach, but people were still going in the water. And people said, yeah, I'll still go to the water like up to my neck, and I'll just swim away from the shark if I see one, and so forth. They didn't seem to be worried. They didn't seem to be scared. Even the people who were in the water, according to this reporter's report and video that they had of interviewing people, a lot of people joked about it. I think it's also nobody got hurt, so I think that helped. I think if somebody got hurt, it'd be a different scenario. But these are sharks being a shark, right? That's what they do. They eat seals. And there was a politician, and he's a county commissioner, and he's proposing a controversial shark hazard mitigation strategy. After this attack, the Commissioner Ron Beatty is looking to deploy baited drum lines with hooks near popular beaches in the hopes of catching great white sharks, a protocol that he says has been successfully implemented in South Africa and Australia. Large sharks found hooked, but still alive, will be shot, he said, and their bodies will be discarded at sea. Now, we've heard this before. We've seen it in Australia. Once you get maybe one or two attacks along the west coast of Australia, usually, I think, at a certain time of year when there's migration of great white sharks, you see the government's freaking out, and you say, okay, now it's time to go kill any shark that's above 3 meters long. That's longer than 3 meters. And it's controversial. There's huge protests. Scientists say this doesn't work. It's proven that it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, guys. Doesn't work. And there's been lots of information now showing that yes, this all happened at Cape Cod, and there's been lots of information from organizations like Ocean Arch and a lot of different scientists involved who are tracking great white sharks and know that in the summers they go up to Cape Cod to feed on seals and other fish, I'm sure, or other fish, and fish. But they come down to, I think in the winter, they come down to like Jacksonville, Florida, and there's a little loop. You can almost see the pattern when you look at all the GPS results. So, and this has been a huge feat to see this. Like, it's a huge discovery to see this pattern over the last few years develop. And it's been going on for a while. We just discovered it because of tagged sharks and so forth. And, it's I find that, he's saying it's a growing problem. He says, this is Beatty's quote. He says, from my viewpoint, based on the sharp increase in shark-related attacks and incidents around Cape Cod in recent years, there is a clear and present danger to the human life as a result of this growing problem. Now, what is the growing problem? Is the growing problem the increase of great white shark populations that have gone from basically endangered numbers to non-endangered numbers? Right? He talks about the increase in shark-related attacks and incidents around Cape Cod. It's funny that he mentions that because Greg Scommel, who is a shark researcher in the state, says that he says the last known shark attack, my computer's freezing. The last known shark attack was, that fatal shark attack was 1936. And the last known attack in the area was, I'm trying to get this, but my computer's frozen. It was something like 1990 something, the last attack. So and he doesn't know of any other shark attacks related to this area in Cape Cod. So the commissioner never really gave any statistics. He's just going off perception, and it could be wrong, false perception. And I can understand the knee-jerk reaction of people being like, "Oh, this is a concern. There's this great white shark that comes close to the beach, feeds on a seal. What if he mistaked a small child or a person and somebody died, or somebody got seriously hurt. I can understand that concern, but that didn't happen. You can't go around killing sharks at will just because you think there's an increased chance of there being a shark attack. There is no increased chance because it hasn't happened, right? And it's not the fact that we're seeing more sharks around Cape Cod necessarily. They could have always been there. We just know that they're there now. So I think that that's a big difference in what we're looking at here, and it's not something that you can just go and start killing sharks at will. You can't do that. That's not what we're out here for. So I think we need to really be concerned with this type of thinking. You see this with politicians, and they have the power to put in proposals like this and to convince their friends in politics to say, no, we can kill these things. It's okay. There's enough of them. We're going to do it. Now, unfortunately, fortunately, the fact that there's increased numbers, great white sharks are not endangered in federal waters. Unfortunately, that takes away any kind of protection. So if this proposal is successful, which I hope it's not, it could be a problem, right? It could be a problem where you see this stuff happen. This article came out in the Boston Herald, and they asked, "Do you back a proposal to catch and kill white sharks off Cape Cod?" And it's interesting to see. There's three answers. Yes, it's getting scary. No, leave nature alone. And the third one is I don't really care. And there's 83. Last time I checked, it was 83%. Or I don't swim near seals. So the answer that came out the top, it was 83% said no, leave nature alone. So a lot of people think this is ridiculous, right? It's not something that we need to worry about. Hopefully this proposal won't go through because the people don't want this to go through. Even the reactions of people that were being interviewed on the beach kind of tell you it seems like there's a bit of a switch, being like, hey, yeah, there was a great white shark feeding event just off the beach. Nobody got hurt, and people were still swimming. That's what they made it look like anyway in the report. You never know with news reports these days. But the people's attitudes were just like, yeah, I was a little shooken, and I don't blame people to be shooken up, but they didn't seem to be worried. They may not go far in the water right away, but they're going to go swimming eventually, and they're going to be on the beach. And I think I think what we need to just be wary about is, yes, there are sharks in the water, and yes, they do feed on seals. And yes, there are chances, a small chance, there is a chance that they might bite a human by accident. Is it a reason to go around killing all sharks? No, there's no valid reason for that. There's no scientific evidence that proves that actually works, first of all. And it's just a knee-jerk reaction from politicians who just don't know enough. So I suggest that politicians go, like this politician, Ron Beatty, go to talk to science experts and find out what the true risks are of humans getting bit. Because that's what we really need. That's what we really need to do, is to inform politicians. I always talk about the fact that we need to inform, the general public, the audience, you guys, myself. But what we really need to do is focus on specific people as well, especially politicians. And politicians who have these knee-jerk reactions, who I understand want to protect the public. They don't want anybody getting hurt. But, within reason, people. Within reason. This is their water. This is the sharks' water. It's not our water. We use it, but it's not our water. Let them feed on their seals. Let them enjoy their life. Let them work their magic in their ecosystem. Let them be an apex predator. And you will be fine. What's funny is, we've talked about gray seals before in Cape Cod and how there's so many of them. Why do you think the sharks go up there? Right? An increase in gray seals means an increase in great white sharks. They will regulate the population. Over time, they will regulate that gray seal population. Let them be there. What's the swimming, we're in late August. How much more swimming in the ocean in Cape Cod is there going to be? Eventually, the sharks are going to go down south. So why kill them now? This is just absolutely ridiculous. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this as well. Go to speakupforblue.com/group if you're not already in the group. If you are, love to hear what you think. Now, I know it's ridiculous, but I'd love to hear what you think. What would you propose that the people do, that the government does? Maybe put signs up, educating the public on what might happen. What not to wear in the waters, like wear less flashy, don't wear flashy jewelry, all that kind of stuff, the regular stuff. Maybe educate them a little bit more. But yeah, I think we really need to work together here to make sure that this doesn't go through, because it's kind of ridiculous. But I'd love to hear your thoughts. Go to speakupforblue.com/group. Request to join. I'll let you in, answer a few questions. I always like to hear from you guys. And yeah, that's basically the show for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I know they were kind of, depressing topics in a way, but I think it's good that you guys know about this, know my thoughts. I want to hear your thoughts in the group so that we can continue this conversation. I'm not hugely knowledgeable on aquaculture and fish farming, so I'm going to try and maybe get somebody on that knows a little bit more and talk to a couple of colleagues of mine and friends of mine that are in sort of the research part of it, and talk about the concerns and how those concerns are mitigated and how they get fish farms established and so forth. But and what are the chances of this fish farm thing happening again? But we'll talk definitely about that. I'll probably add some more stuff in the group for people to know more about. And that's it for the show for today. I really want to thank you guys for listening. You have been listening to the Speak Up for Blue podcast. My name is Andrew Lewin. I am your host. Happy Monday and happy conservation.